Greetings, Matanistas. I'm back in Spain again, but I'm in a part of Spain that you're probably not too familiar with. Think of the central northern coast and you'll come to the province of Asturias. I'm in the city of Gijón in Asturias, which has its own very rich traditions and cuisine. It's a little bit different from the rest of Spain, and what they drink is certainly very different from the rest of Spain. So join me for today's vlog on Asturian cuisine. So Richard's with me again, and we are going to a Sidreria, which is a cider house or cider tavern. They often serve very good food, and this one, called El Centenario, is one that I've been to before, but because of meat molesters in our party, I've never been able to properly enjoy. So, as I said, this restaurant, or Sidreria, specialises in seafood, and one of the big differences between this province and the rest of Spain is that the preferred drink, rather than wine, is actually cider. Now, you might ask what is going on here. The bottles of cider are not well aerated over here, it's the way they produce it. So, to provide that aeration, it is poured from a great height. And you don't get like a large glass full of it, you get a very small glass, which you should be necking in one. But it's okay to do it in two goes. And I have tried doing this once myself, and I spilt nearly the whole bottle. So, cheers, Muttonisters. Here's to a great meal and a great series. Oh, yeah, it's great to be back here again. The cider bottles contain 70 centilitres, and you can see how much of it has been consumed in one pouring. And in case you're wondering what that metal contraption is, it is there for the waiter to pour the cider, lest shock horror, a drop goes astray. And whilst Asturian food is probably more famous for its strong blue cheeses and its hearty land-based dishes, of course, it does have an extensive coastline, so seafood is every bit as important here as your meat and your veg. Well, Matanistas, the food is about to arrive, so that makes a quick slurp a mandatory duty that I have to perform. When you taste it, the cider is very lightly effervescent because of the pouring. However, in terms of its consistency, like a southwest English scrumpy or clear cider, as in the sort that you rarely see at pubs unless they're real ale pubs or if you're at a beer festival. So, how's that to get us on our way, Matanistas? Zamberinus, which are baby scallops, and grilled prawns. Okay, and some mixed salad as well, just to provide a little bit of balance. So, the Zamberinus, or baby scallops, will have been cooked in garlic and olive oil on a flat iron skillet. And in my opinion, they have a slightly more delicate flavour than scallops. Great with a big squeeze from a chunk of lemon. Now, on to the prawns. Mutton's rule, don't ignore the heads. There's so much goodness tucked inside there. Always suck out the meat from the heads and the juices. So incredibly flavoursome, and obviously I can't peel one-handed, so I've peeled one of the bodies of the prawns. Oh yeah, That's how it should be. Soft, tender, taste the shells, you can taste the fishiness. What wonderful prawns. And they, Matanistas, deserve a slur. So two things, Matanistas, to note about prawns. First of all, they're best off prepared in shell. The shell imparts flavour during the cooking process. Yes, it's a bit messy, but it's worth it for the additional flavour. And secondly, if the prawn meat itself starts falling apart or is a little bit flaky, you know you've been sold some frozen duds. And not just frozen duds, you've been sold something that's way past its eating date. Now then, Muttonistas, a local speciality that you're probably unfamiliar with or might know the name of but have never tried has arrived. We have Orisius, sea urchins cooked in cider. And the trick here is to spoon out the flesh without getting those spines in your mouth. They are very popular in Japan as a type of sushi, but here they eat them cooked, as I said, usually in cider. Okay, so here we go. Yep, very much up my street. People who don't like strong shells won't probably like this dish, but if you do, it's a dish you must try when you're up here. It's very hard actually to describe the taste. It has some similarities with a clam or a mussel, but the texture is much, much softer than that. In fact, having had a few more, I think the consistency is a little bit like the meat in the head of a crab, except it has a much meatier, beefier flavour than that, similar to that you'd find in a mussel or a clam. They weren't actually Richard's cup of tea, so I'm taking one for the team, doing the hard yards again for you folks. Okay, two more dishes to come to round up what has been so far a delectable lunch, so I'd better cleanse my palate with a bit more sidra. And we have moule mariniere or marinated mussels. I think they call them mejillones a la marinera here. Very popular dish, cooked in white wine. The clam dishes, they did have a cooked in cider option, but I was slightly surprised that they didn't with mussels. If any of you know why that would be, please leave a comment. Big fat mussels. I can't say for sure whether they've been farmed or they're caught freshly, although usually more often than not in Spain, they are caught freshly. And I suspect caught freshly because that was melt in the mouth stuff. Too often in the UK, you order mussels, and to be honest, too often they taste like rubber because they're straight from the freezer. And finally, Muttonistas, we have Fritos de Piscine. Piscine is anglerfish, very similar in texture to monkfish. Sometimes they marinate these things in a little bit of vinegar, but I'm not sure. Only one way to find out, though. Now, with lemon, which I think is important for these types of fried fish dishes. And of course, this is a very firm fish which benefits from being coated in batter. I've never said, by the way, for those of you who think I'm anti Anglo cuisine, that fish and chips is a bad way of preparing fish. The problem is, it's the only way we prepare fish back in the UK. And yes, batter does hold in flavour. I will admit to agreeing to that. Yeah, that it's really nicely complemented by the citrus. So if you order this dish, folks, don't forget to give that lemon a good squeeze. Okay, Muttonistas, I will get on with this and see you for the coffee report. Quite enjoying the espresso here as well. Nice, rich, dark roast, though they do have a little more water in Spain than I'm used to. Well, Matanistas, what a fantastic lunch that was. In case you don't realise, Spanish dining hours are a little bit different to the rest of Europe and most places I've been to. We rocked up for lunch at 10 to 3 in the afternoon, finished just after 5. That's the way they like it. Oh yes, and it's the way I like it as well. Anyway, reasonably priced meal. We didn't have that much to drink, 3 bottles of cider, 70 centilitres at 6 to 7% each, and the whole meal felt fairly light on the stomach. Anyway, that's enough from our lunch. Look at those people surfing in the back in the middle of November. Who says there isn't any global warming? Anyway, the vlog's going to continue. I'll be back with you in a few ticks for tonight's meal, which will be a bit of a meatier affair. Okay, Muttonistas, time for part 2 of this vlog. And if any of you are thinking, oh, you're having your dinner when you finish lunch at 5, well, let me tell you folks, it's 11 now. The Spanish take their lunch later and their dinner later. So I am ensconced in the Sidreria Alberto. They even have an English menu for you if you end up dining here. And for those who like sport, they've got a few screens, including one that's showing snooker. So you don't really have to worry about your favourite sport being on here. Anyway, it's late, so I'd better get on with the order. After all that seafood at lunchtime, we're going to go for some hardcore traditional local specialities involving cheese, meat, and, unusually, corn cakes, which are a local Asturian speciality, something I didn't know until a few years ago. So, Matanistas, the first dish has arrived, and it is the daddy of blue cheeses produced right here in Asturias. It is called Cabrales. It is the strongest blue cheese I think I've ever eaten anywhere, and we'd better get some sidra poured because this stuff dries up your saliva. So I'm not a big fan of quince, but with this cheese, unfortunately the cavalry arrived in the form of the waiter just in the nick of time with some sidra. And I can tell you, folks, that in terms of the food matching up here, the match between that cheese and the cider is about as close to perfect as you can get. Now, unlike Roquefort, Cabrales is made from cow's milk and has even richer veins of mould running through it. For me, it's got that strong, dirty, mouldy flavour that I love. I do like my strong cheeses, but it's a bit too much for Richard, who described it as tasting like the sweaty socks he found down the back of the sofa. Heresy from Richard there, if you ask me. Okay, my mouth is suitably dry and comfortably numb, and the next dish has arrived called tortas. Tortas are another local traditional favourite, corn cakes, and on top of these corn cakes we have chicken and ratatouille, morcilla, which is the local blood sausage, and a fried egg, and on the third one, some minced pork. And it looks so appetising that Richard has piled in before I've even had a chance. Okay, first the torta with chicken and ratatouille. Yeah, that was nice, the chicken and ratatouille torta. And the corn cake itself is not too heavy, which these things can often mean you end up getting carved up. Anyway, a bit more cider before we go on to the morcilla or blood sausage or black pudding. And now the black pudding torta. Hope you can all see that properly. I'm a big fan of all blood sausages, this one included, and they've pureed this up a bit. It is quite different from your slab of black pudding that you get in a fry-up in the UK there. This one is a little bit more refined. Now, after that palate cleansing slurp of cider, onto the minced pork. Not bad, but could do with a little bit more spice. They've obviously put paprika and a bit of salt, but obviously as somebody who's been having some spicy minced Thai pork dishes of late, this one doesn't seem quite as flavourable as the others, but it isn't bad at all, I can tell you that. And one thing I've picked up on this trip, which I should have done on previous trips, is when they serve you those little shots or mouthfuls of cider, they call it a cuisine de cidre. Now then, the pièce de résistance has arrived, the main event. Down to the table we go, and I give you Matanistas the Cachopo, which is an Asturian take on schnitzel, but to be honest, they've kind of injected it with steroids, it's that heavy. And Richard said quite accurately, it's like a mixture between schnitzel and cordon bleu. It's ham and cheese rolled up in a thick layer of breadcrumbs. So let's crack it open and see how this one tastes. They even have competitions with awards and prizes for the best cachopo. There we go, boys and girls. Is that heavy enough for you? And of course, to balance it off, there's a duo of salad on the side, green salad and Glasgow salad. And we do get a little bonus here. It's ham, cheese, and beef. I wasn't aware that much was going on. Gosh, bit of a heart attack on a plate, this, isn't it? So that orgy of meat and cheese just melts in the mouth. However, one thing I have to say is the chances of us finishing that are pretty slim. Richard would really have to be racing into form for us to polish this off. Well, I'm piling in. The cheesy and hammy bits are absolutely my favourite, and I'm going to soldier on two-handed, so I will be back with you to report how much of this we actually got through. Well, we made quite an effort there. Portion size, well, it was very reasonable, shall we say. I'll show you what we've left, although Richard's getting a bit of a second wind here. But I think we managed about 3/4 of it. Certainly to have that on your own as one person, well, you could say it's a working man's meal for sure. Anyway, it was very tasty, and again, a great match with the cider. I'm passing on my dessert, but Richard has gone for the apple tart. It's like an art form, the cider pouring, and unfortunately, the only artistry I'm capable of is putting it away. And it seems fair and balanced that Richard's having an apple tart for dessert, and I'm getting my 5 a day in the form of the apples used to make the cider. Well, Muttonisters, I can say I'm truly satisfied with that meal. Some local specialities, nothing too fancy there. We did have some exotic seafood specialities at lunchtime. Lunchtime bill was a little more expensive than this one, which was really quite cheap. And you can probably see behind me that they have an outdoor terrace, and believe it or not, in the middle of November, we could have eaten out there. It was actually okay temperature-wise, not boiling hot, but no chill in the air at all. I think about 16 degrees. Plenty more content coming from Asturias and elsewhere this month. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Remember, keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing, and most of all, don't forget, you can't beat a bit of mutton.